Welcome everyone. Good morning. Thank you for coming to our session on faculty diversification. My name is John Stanskis. I am the immediate past president of the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges, and I work at San Bernardino Valley College. Rania, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm also at San Bernardino Valley College. My name is Rania Hamdi, and I am the Professional Development Coordinator.
Perfect. We have a limited amount of time today, and so here's what we were hoping to cover. We'll see if we can get through all of that. But why is our diversity, equity, and inclusion work part of Guided Pathways? Support for faculty diversification, a little bit about the importance of data, how we constructed a district-wide dialogue, what we learned, and then a summary of the changes to procedures and processes. So why is DEI work important to Guided Pathways? I think we have to start from the framework that Guided Pathways is intended to support students' success, support students achieving their goals, and to clarify that path. And diversity, equity, and inclusion work is part of helping students achieve their goals. And I love this slide because despite what we may hear in the media or from other circles, we do not live in a post-racial society. We live in a society that is founded on slavery to build economic wealth and to purposefully disadvantage individuals for the advancement of other individuals in our society. And after 400 years of that, we are not in a place where everyone is starting on an equal footing that we hear about anymore. And we have to acknowledge what our students need from us to be successful and recognize the potential of our students to be successful in achieving their outcomes that they desire. And that every student requires our attention and our acknowledgement of who they are as individuals to help them achieve those outcomes. And when we talk about the work of anti-racism, we're really talking about work of the heart. This is not when you engage in this at your college, this is not something that is focused simply based on statistics. We have to understand the human aspect of what we're doing. We have to value self-awareness and emotional intelligence and understand that emotions play a big role in this because all of us have been shaped by this society in which we live. And our outcomes and our ability to engage in this work can be emotional. We are responsible for our own growth, and we need to have an open mindset to be able to dialogue. And I liked this, framework of agreements and conditions in order to have courageous conversations in this. Rania, did I miss anything here?
I just wanted to add that coming into this work, there's definitely a level of vulnerability that not everyone always expects that there will be. And so I think that that's really important, knowing that you have to be vulnerable and raw and open yourself up a little bit in maybe sometimes an uncomfortable way, but in an important way to be able to do this work.
And we have to think about anti-racism as a journey. And I will tell you, in my time as a statewide faculty leader, traveling around the state and meeting with different groups of faculty, I've seen faculty in every role here and administrators in every role here. There's the fear zone, the learning zone, and the growth zone. And the goal is to move the institution into that growth zone. And there's no way to do that without moving the people into that growth zone. And so recognizing that this is a journey, that different individuals on campus are going to be in different places on this journey, and designing professional development, why Ranya's here, and dialogue to help us move into that journey is really important. The reasons or the support for faculty diversification, number 4 right there, this is from an official communication from the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges. Number 4 was to redesign the evaluation and hiring processes of faculty at colleges. This was released in June of 2020. I'm having trouble with my years. And locally, our Board of Trustees adopted similar goals for the district that align with the goals of the California Community College's Chancellor's Office. And so this is something that has been moving and gaining speed and steam throughout the state from the institutions here. Our local academic senate adopted a resolution, again, specifically about becoming an anti-racist, no-hate education institution in the summer of 2020. And our Guided Pathways team was charged by the Academic Senate to do, among other things, evaluate and propose changes to the hiring processes of the district through the lens of racial justice and equity. And so building that support and having that support from the state level all the way to the local academic senate level, charging the Guided Pathways Committee with this work, was important in being able to move that work forward in this way. And so we can talk about equity in hiring. Rania, do you want to talk about how we set up this forum idea?
Sure. So this was something that was definitely a collaborative effort. There was an AP that needed revision, specifically about faculty hiring, and that mostly is an HR function. So John and I were able to collaborate with our Vice Chancellor of HR to set up these district-wide forums to get feedback. And we did this in 4 parts and really had amazing turnout. So we're going to take you through what that process looked like, and hopefully you can do something similar if it works for you at your campus.
And just to have some data to ground the conversation, this is from the 2016-2017 fiscal year for the entire state of what we look like as community colleges. 73% of our students are students of color. 61% of our tenured faculty are white. 60% of our non-tenured faculty are white. And you can see that that is fairly similar for classified staff and senior leadership in the institution. And so the permanent employees of college districts are not representative of the student population served. We know that when we have a more diverse group of employees that that are responsible for the governance of an institution, that all students do better. Literature has told us that the correlation between individual instructor and individual student is not as strong as institutional change. If the institution is more diverse in terms of its employees, then the racial equity gaps close or become more narrow and all students do better. That tells us this is about culture, right? This is about the culture of the institution and the way the institution operates, is how we need to move forward. This was additional data that we have from San Bernardino Valley College's 2017 EEO report that shows our students who are Latinx and our administrators and full-time faculty compared to the city demographic population. And so we engaged after this dialogue and the presentation of this information in this 4-part dialogue series. And we broke down the hiring process into 4 main components. The first part was what happens before you actually form a pool of applicants, before you have a hiring committee. And most of us have a hiring process in the community colleges that has, the first part is some sort of job announcement and advertising of that job announcement. Then we construct a first level committee. There are lots of ways that that happens, but usually there's consultation with the academic senate and other representation groups to form the committee. There's the first level interview, advancing candidates from the first level interview process to a second level interview, and then there's a second level interview and evaluation or actual hiring by the Board of Trustees. So hopefully that sounds familiar to you all. There's lots of nuance in how different colleges have written their administrative procedures, 7210 about faculty hiring, but those are the main elements of a hiring process for faculty. And so we had a 4-part series to look at each of those together. And this is a summary of the dialogue that we had. The announcement went out to the entire district, inviting participation. Rania, I think we had anywhere between 30 and 60 participants at every one of these 4. Which is pretty good.
And it wasn't just faculty. I mean, primarily, but we also had our part-time faculty there, classified and managers, to engage in this dialogue.
And students.
Students as well. Yes.
We had students as well. And some of what we learned is that advertising is important as well as timing. There was a big dialogue around restructuring the job description to highlight the values of the institution. Much of our communication, if you just go onto the registry, I don't know how many of you have been on the registry, and try to look at job announcements, they are usually structured in such a way that if you are a new employee, you feel like they're doing you a favor by allowing you to apply. Is that fair? I don't know. That might be a little harsh, but what if we actually tried to attract people to want to come work with us? That would be something that can be done simply by restructuring the job description or the job announcement to highlight what we value, which is a diverse pool of employees, particularly in terms of race and ethnicity. Communicating our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion is also important in that job announcement. What else is on here? Utilize prior work by EEO, Enrollment Management, and the Equity Committee. So trying to pull together some of the work that's happened across the campus, cultivate relationships within the community of where potential applicants might come from, maintain relationships with our students on their educational journey. Some of them may want to come be a faculty member. This was particularly about faculty hiring in the future. And we acknowledged a hard truth, which did not sit well with everyone, but our current contract structure doesn't align with expanding the diversity of our applicants. That our seniority system of part-time employment means that the people who have been here longest are usually less diverse than some of our more recent hires, and that is a structural issue that was beyond the scope of what we could talk about in terms of the Academic Senate charging Guided Pathways Committee to do that, but it was something that we brought up. And so we weren't afraid to talk about the things that, that were happening there. Do you want to talk about this one, Rania? No? Okay. On November 19th, we talked about the hiring committee, this first level hiring committee. Have you all been to an EEO training that is required to participate in the hiring committee? I know you have. I can't see you all because of the way this is projecting, but I know you've done that. And sometimes it feels like this is a mandatory PowerPoint that we're all going to go through because we're required to by law, and you have to pretend to listen and I have to pretend to care. Is that's harsh again. It's Friday. I hope you all are okay with harsh, but that's sometimes what it feels like to sit in an EEO training about hiring in that way. When really, what if we approached this in the way we approach professional development, which is, let's talk about why this is important. Why this is important to ensure that we have the best candidates to serve our students. And we know that institutions that are more racially and ethnically diverse serve all students better. So how can we ensure that our pool is as open as possible to all of the possibilities to serve our students well? And that kind of work was something that was brought up in our conversations here. The other thing we talked about was the composition of the committee, that often we choose, and our recommendation to the Academic Senate was, we choose faculty for their discipline expertise to sit on a hiring committee. And that is one of the minimum qualifications for faculty, is discipline expertise. The other minimum qualification is a sensitivity to the diverse needs of our students. I believe that's the actual Title V quote. We're working to change that. But it is about being able to serve all of our students, our student body, particularly our students of color, which we know 73% of the students are students of color coming to our campus. And many hiring committees do not consider that in the composition of the committee. But we should. We should be, there's only two minimum qualifications to be a faculty member in the California community colleges. So you have to meet both. It's not okay just to meet one of them.
And then, John, you know, something else that came up too was that people saw that they were really weighted differently. You know, that equity and diversity minimum qual was really just one question sometimes, and the discipline expertise was weighted so much heavier, and they should be much more even.
Exactly, and that is what we talked about. What happens in that first level interview there is, and many of you, this may resonate with you, you've heard this, we have to ask a diversity question. What does that mean? I mean, the dialogue that we had as an institution, I was really proud of the dialogue. We acknowledged we focused too much on the discipline expertise and not enough on the additional minimum qualification. And perhaps there are ways to design a scoring mechanism, for example, where usually you ask a list of questions and you're supposed to provide some sort of feedback or score or something about how the candidate did on each question. What if we use 2 columns? What if we had one about how the candidate answered the question that demonstrated their discipline expertise, and how did the candidate answer this question demonstrating that they can serve our students well? What if we had that was one of the ideas that came up, so that our expectation of being able to talk about race and ethnicity and gender is explicit with the candidate. That we want candidates who infuse that into multiple answers, not just the diversity question, if that makes sense. We identified that interview questions are being repeated or reused and perhaps not capturing what we want from candidates because of that. And we need to be comfortable asking the HR representative, how diverse is this pool? Is it diverse enough to continue with this hiring process, or do we need to do more targeted advertising or consider something else before we proceed? And reflect on the what biases are we putting into a question, and how can we have a conversation about minimizing those biases, not in a way that calls out the other committee members, but in a way that says, you know, if we ask that question this way, if you don't currently work in the community college system, you're not going to know. You're not going to do well. And is that really what we were screening for? Because we don't have to ask a question about that. We could just look at a resume. What is it we want to know about the candidate? How they work with instructing students, how they work with groups of students or groups of individuals who may have different ethnic or cultural backgrounds than they do. What is their experience with that? What did they learn from those experiences? Are those the kinds of things that we want to know from a candidate? Did you want to say something else, Rania?
No, we're good. Just about, we'll get through this presentation probably in about 5 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions, because I'm sure there are a lot of questions.
Okay. So what we learned on the last one is that the first screening committee somehow, and I've heard this across the state, somehow we've locked in a number. Like, you have to send 3 candidates forward, no more and no less. And sometimes you don't have 3 candidates to send forward. It should be completely normal for a screening committee to send anywhere between, say, 0 and 5. It's okay for a screening committee to say, I don't think any of these candidates rise to the level of someone we should offer a permanent position to, or a potentially permanent position to. Or, we have more than 3 fantastic candidates. Let's send 4 forward. And lastly, the Board of Trustees should be asking for aggregated hiring data once a year at a meeting where it is discussed, not on the consent agenda, where it is discussed in an open meeting for the public. Here are all the hires that we did. Here was the diversity of the applicants, the diversity of the first level interview candidates, the diversity of the second level interview candidates, and who we actually hired, and what does that say about our hiring process. So I got the cue. Rania very nicely said we have 5 minutes left. So here was our summary of changes to the Administrative Procedure 7210, if you are using the CCLC guidelines for naming and numbering policies and procedures, 7210 is your faculty hiring procedure. Otherwise, if you're not using that, then you have some other number. But we have some recommendations for the minimum qualifications. The job requirement for minimum qualifications, this is actually a direct quote from the recommended change to Title V established by the State Academic Senate for California Community Colleges to the Chancellor's Office. And this is being worked on as a regulatory change. Human Resources should evaluate the diversity of the pool of applicants and determine whether further outreach is required before proceeding. The inclusion of students on the hiring committee was a big recommendation. There were a couple ways, and during our dialogue, they didn't settle on one particular way, but somehow students need to be included in the hiring committee. They could either be, the three ways that we talked about were, they could be a member of the hiring committee. So we could ask the Associated Student Government to appoint a student to a hiring committee. If there's some sort of, for faculty, a teaching demonstration, instead of having a pretend, we're going to pretend to be your class for 10 minutes and you're going to pretend that you're teaching us something, we could do a guest lecture. We could have a candidate come and teach a class as part of that. And that is allowable. And then solicit student feedback about that process as information for the hiring committee. And the last way is there are some models out there where the second level interview that is done by the president of the college or his or her designee, and they invite the president of the student government to participate. And so those were three options. Our recommendation to the Academic Senate, which they adopted and we forwarded to Human Resources, was somehow students need to be included in this process. That's who we're serving. They need to be included in the process. Not in the AP, but recommended changes to process. We need to have a holistic revision of the job announcement and advertising beyond the registry. We need to revise the current EEO mandatory training to be more DEI professional development. The screening criteria of using 2 columns that I mentioned earlier encourage the Board of Trustees to evaluate that aggregate data and empower Human Resources to ask questions of the first level committee regarding the impact on the diversity of the candidates that different choices the first level committee may have about screening criteria. None of these things probably should be written into an official administrative procedure or board policy, but they can be revisions to practice. And that is was the recommendation here. Okay, and that was the end. I can stop sharing my screen so that I can see all of you again. It's awesome. Really weird talking to just PowerPoint and Rania.
Zoom is just really weird in general.
Yes. And so we should have time for questions.
Yep. So we just got a question in the chat, and then we encourage you. We're not a large group. There's only about 16 of us in here. So we encourage you, if you just want to put a hand up and unmute as well. But let's get to the question in the chat first. So the question is, do you think you would consider a different student group outside of student government, EOPS, Emoja, athletics, club presidents, etc.? Absolutely. I mean, that's a great suggestion, and something that I think resonated most with our faculty was the teaching demo. And we did propose that to HR, that a lot of faculty said they had done it at other campuses, adjuncts particularly, and it made them feel, more at ease when they were in front of real students, not, the committee. And So that would be great. I mean, we have Emoja specific classes on campus. How phenomenal would it be to have the teaching demo in one of those classes if we could just get 10 minutes of time? So absolutely. Yes, thank you, TL. It is absolutely a great idea because we do have those classes that run on campus, and I think HR hopefully would be open to that. And that's something really quickly too that I will add. You know, this collaboration with HR, I think really strengthened the connection and the feedback loop. And I serve on the EEO committee as well, and I'm already seeing some changes happen. HR is starting to expand the way that they collect some demographic data from applicants ahead of time so that we can be able to present that to the board more holistically. I was just in a hiring committee training, and already we talked about all of the different types of biases that exist when you're on a hiring committee, affinity bias, and so many others. And so even though we only did this semester and the AP has not been finalized just yet, it should be finalized over the summer. It's finishing up second read. We're already seeing changes. So it was really positively received. Yes, question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, and I apologize, John, if you mentioned it, and you really set the bar high from some of the stuff that I just saw that you guys are doing at San Bernardino Valley. I'm just wondering, are you requiring all that participate on hiring committees to go through the training that Rania just mentioned?
So that is our recommendation to human resources, and we're hoping that those changes are implemented over the summer to start in the next academic year. We live in a 2-college district, and so changes to board policy and administrative procedure have to go through a consultative process. And our goal at Valley College was to ensure that our college and our academic senate were prepared to make a recommendation by January to engage that process so that those technical changes to procedure and process could take place before the next academic year. And so we almost made it. I think we had the first week of February, we got it through the Senate, but we were very close to meeting our deadline there. But we also had to have a lot of conversation. Besides those 4 forums, I think we did something on the in-service day in January, and we took it to the Academic Senate after each of the forums, as well as twice before they approved it. And we took it to the Guided Pathways Committee to evaluate what happened in the forum. So there was a lot of dialogue, but that level of dialogue is necessary to implement structural change and to really generate enough buy-in from the institution to make it work. So I hope so. I hope that's what will happen in the fall.
And I will just mention TL Brink is here from our sister college, Crafton Hills. And so our sister college was invited to those forums as well. They were, I don't want to say Valley led, but really we had taken the initiative to reach out to HR, invited our sister college. So some of their faculty did come, but then additionally, they did their own forums at Crafton to solicit the same sort of feedback and get it to human resources as well. So they really did get feedback from both colleges. And that really was something that we wanted to ensure as we went through this process, that it wasn't just feedback from only Valley folks, that really both of our colleges had an equal place in getting that feedback to HR. Any other questions? Thanks, TL. It's good to have a cheerleader in here.
I'm sorry to ask another question, but
no,
I was
please
just
do.
wondering, how have you dealt with the same people volunteering for employment committees? Because I won't mention the campus, but as a manager, sometimes you have to be on certain committees, you have to lead certain committees, and I would be amazed the same faculty, the same classified would be on almost every committee that I'm on. And that right there, you know, is going to be a one lens hiring, and that may lead to some not having diverse candidates, or a diverse hiring of candidates. Have you dealt with that at all?
So faculty who serve on hiring committees are appointed by the Academic Senate, and there isn't a way around that. At the state level, and again, at the local level, we have encouraged academic senates to really consider, if they have a process in place for that, what are the biases built into that process? Do you automatically choose people from the discipline to be on the hiring committee? Do you think they're the only people who can tell if someone is qualified to teach at the lower division level in that discipline or not? Do you have a process that simply works on volunteers, or is there a part of your contract that requires service to the institution and you could utilize that in some way? And so questioning how those appointments happen and what are the ramifications of those appointments is something that we've asked our local academic senate to do, as well as statewide, we've asked all academic senates to do.
I will say, though, something that our new Vice Chancellor of HR has done, at least on some hiring committees, is not take people away. So those people that are appointed by the Academic Senate or appointed by different groups, you know, they were appointed, so they'll stay. But I have seen in just recent months, HR adding people, right? And looking at the structure and saying, you know, yes, it's happened on a couple. No, you haven't seen that, John? I have seen a couple of people added, not taken away, though.
So you can't add faculty. You can add classified staff and managers. It's really unfortunate. What I would like to have happen is often what I've heard across the state is there's this adversarial relationship between the Academic Senate and Human Resources, and that's not healthy. Actually having a dialogue between Human Resources and the Academic Senate appointing person, usually the president, to say, did you consider both minimum qualifications when you made these appointments to this committee? Can I help you encourage other people to volunteer if it's a volunteer situation or something? But to engage in a dialogue about that is much more reasonable.
So Diana gave us the time's up mark, and we got through everything. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. This PowerPoint is available on Attendify, and you probably know how to find us if you have additional questions. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here.
Thanks, everyone.